So right off the bat tonight, Syria from every angle. The U.S., along with other nations, is on the verge of a military strike. It's a response to the Syrian government killing at least 1,000 of its own civilians with chemical weapons. We have full coverage on both the impact here at home as well as the potentially crippling effects across the globe to markets and the economy. Fox News' Leland Vittert. Zuhdi Jasser is founder and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy. Jonathan Hoenig is with us, a hedge fund manager and a Fox News contributor. We've got oil analyst Matt Battiali and the Wall Street Journal's James Freeman on emerging markets. That's quite a group. Let's get started on the ground in the Middle East with Leland Vittert, who's in Jerusalem with the latest information. Leland, what is the latest?
Hi, Melissa. The war drums continue to beat louder and louder by the hour here in the Middle East. Often before the real war, we have a war of words, and that's exactly what is going on as the Syrians are now saying that Tel Aviv, the major Israeli city, will burn if they are attacked. And the Iranians, who are the main backers of the Syrians, are also saying Israel would pay a dear price if Syria is attacked by the United States. At this point, you really have to look at the Syrians' ability to counterstrike, especially their long-range missiles, which they have a lot of, including the Scud missiles. Obviously, they have a chemical weapons capability that must be taken into account. They have anti-ship missiles that can be launched against many ships out in the Mediterranean Sea, including possibly the U.S. fleet if it gets close enough. And then also some very formidable air defense measures that they have deployed and on ready alert there in Syria. Around the Middle East, militaries are also on alert. The Turkish military is now on alert. And here in Israel, they have deployed their Patriot anti-aircraft and anti-missile systems, the Arrow anti-missile system, and then also their Iron Dome missile defense system. In addition, here in Israel, they are calling up members of the Air Force Reserve, also calling up members of the intelligence corps from their reserve forces, getting ready in case they need to react. Not quite panic on the streets of Israel, but certainly grave concern as thousands of Israelis are lining up at gas mask distribution centers in case that response by President Assad would include chemical weapons. Every Israeli is entitled to a gas mask, government issued. Not everyone has one, and obviously they are trying to get one before it is too late. Prime Minister Netanyahu here in Israel has said that the Israelis would like to stay out of the Syrian civil war, but promise to respond, quote, fiercely in the event Israel is attacked. The last issue here, Melissa, is really the timing problem that has gotten to happen here. The more the U.S. talks, the more fear here in Israel is that the Syrians are going to be able to move a lot of their advanced weaponry away from the bases that are already on the target list. And lastly, the more everyone talks, the more likely the Syrians or Iranians are to make some threat, some type of rhetoric that eventually someone's going to decide that they have to deliver on those promises of retaliation rather than just taking their licks and moving on. Melissa, back to you.
Yeah, those are all great points. Leland, thank you so much. I want to go to Zuhdi Jasser now, who has family in Syria. So as we stand on the edge of a military strike here, I mean, it could have severe backlash. We were just hearing that. Zuhdi, have you talked to your family? How are they doing?
Well, they continue to be horrified. They sleep hearing missiles fly overhead, gunfire, helicopters, and this is not only family in Damascus, but those in Aleppo. Our friends' families in Homs and Hama continue to hear the same thing. So I can tell you, Melissa, in the last few days, that has been increasing on the ground because this, as the Wall Street Journal called it, the loose lips of this discussion of what we're going to do. Assad knows that this might be his last chance, and if he can put this away in the next few days and get the rebels to be quiet, and go away, which they will not do. Yeah. So I think things are increasing on the ground there, and our families are just, they don't know whether to sleep with the windows open or closed because so many of the women and children died at that chemical attack because their windows in the heat were open.
I mean, what about that point that we just heard in the report before you about this idea that we were talking about what we're going to do and when we're going to do it? Does that make the situation more precarious?
It really does. I don't understand.
I don't either.
I mean, I was in the Navy for 11 years, and I don't remember wars being fought this much ahead of time and trajectory. It's almost as if we do a bombing, our administration is doing it just to say that we did something and we delineated the red line. If we're going to go into Syria, Syria is no Libya. Assads are no Gaddafis. They are the North Korea of the Middle East. If we go in there, it has to be all in. We have to knock out their entire military infrastructure, knock out senior generals, senior military military and runways, etc., and protect and provide arms to the rebels that we haven't done yet. This can't be a partial operation. Our families are telling us, yes, they need the help or they're going to continue to die, but it has to be done right if this is going to end soon rather than drag it on even more so.
And is that what you think should happen? Would that be the right action for the U.S.?
It really would, because right now, doing nothing is emboldening Iran. This language you're hearing about against Israel is the same old language they're using now, whether we do something or not. And embolden Iran, in a country that's using weapons of mass destruction, will not be afraid to use nuclear weapons and ramp up their own nuclear program. So it's an American interest to defeat and destroy the Assad regime, no different than it is in the humanitarian interest of all of our families on the ground there in Syria.
Zuhdi, thank you so much, and our thoughts and prayers are with your family.
Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it.
Now to what the Syrian situation means for your money. After all, that is the name of this show. After a two-day losing streak, the Dow ended today still on edge, but up 48 points. So what is the impact of the Syrian conflict on markets? Jonathan Hoenig is with capitalistpig.com. You know, if you look at the markets over the past couple days, they seem very jittery and nervous right now. It feels like we're in wait-and-see mode.
Yeah, indeed, Melissa. We got some of yesterday's precipitous loss back for the Dow. But as you said, I mean, it's been a rough couple of days and even couple of weeks for the market. Interestingly, so far the market is actually following very much the pattern we saw in the first two Gulf Wars, which was weakness prior to the conflict. Then once the conflict actually broke out, as there was more and more indications it was going to be strong and short and contained, you actually started to see stocks rally. So the whole question here, is this going to end up more like the first two Gulf Wars, which were with a purpose, which were very contained and very quickly won, or more like the 1973 war or the Suez Canal War, longer wars and much more tough on the markets as well?
Yeah, so what do you do? How do you set yourself up for that situation? Because I heard people talking today saying, oh, I was so glad that I took advantage of the dip yesterday. I don't know if that's a safe bet, though.
Yeah, I mean, well, volatility, you have to get used to it in this type of environment, Melissa. And again, I mean, it's really the question of what happens in terms of escalation, perhaps more fighting in the Middle East. I mean, there's really no way to look at it from an economic perspective. You have to almost look at it from a political perspective. I think from an investor's perspective, You have to hesitate and not make those all or none decisions. Now more than ever, I think you don't want to use one day's headline as a reason to either go all in or all out of stocks.
Yeah, no, it almost seems like it's a better bet to hold steady rather than doing this play where you go heavy into, the safety plays where you dive into gold and dive into commodities.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes to that point we always talk about of hopefully being diversified, because even as stocks have weakened in the last couple of days, as you pointed out, gold has been extremely strong, back over $1,400 an ounce, and even bonds, which we've seen a lot of investors veering away from, they've rallied. So now more than ever, with all this political uncertainty in the Middle East, you need to make sure you've spread your investments around and don't bet the farm on any one asset.
Okay, Jonathan Hoenig, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, of course, oil also at the forefront of everyone's mind right now. Oil production here at home, it's at almost a 24-year high, yet prices are skyrocketing, hitting their highest level in more than 2 years today as a result of what's going on in Syria. Are we insulated after all that fracking? I want to bring in Matt Badiali, oil analyst at Stansberry & Associates research firm. First of all, let me get your bet. How high do you think oil goes as a result of what's going on?
Hi, Melissa. No, I think we're pretty close to the top. I don't see this. I don't see this sending oil prices to $140 a barrel. I think it's going to come down before it goes up.
Come down from here, because there are folks that I was talking to today making a lot of phone calls saying that they think oil could go to 115, 117 if we see more than a one-day conflict. If it isn't just an in and out, that's where we would go. What do you think?
I think that would be as high as I could see it going right now. I mean, we saw something similar in the first Gulf War. It was the run-up. It was the anticipation of what was going to happen. And then once we got a feel for the scope of the conflict, oil prices came straight back down. The whole spike in oil prices lasted at most 8 months back then. And I think that really the story for oil prices has been Egypt. I mean, we've been watching Egypt. It's very significant to the price of oil. It's what's driving the fear premium. And so I don't see the Syria conflict is really just a little bit extra, and I don't see it as important as Egypt.
But there are a lot of people wondering, why is there a fear premium in oil at all? If we have production at this 24-year high in October for the first time since 1995, we're going to be producing more oil than we're importing. Why aren't we totally insulated from what's going on?
Well, the oil market's global oil. It's a global market. That's part of it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, fundamentals don't support oil prices as high as they are today. And really, what is critical about the Middle East is the Suez Canal. It's the Straits of Hormuz. It's the ability to get oil from the Middle East to demand in China. That's what's really important. So even though we're at half of net export or net imports in the U.S. from 2006, we've cut almost 7 million barrels a day from our imports. That's about half of what the European Union uses in a day. So you would think that we would be insulated.
I want to ask you real quick before you go, because I want to bring it home for our viewers at home. They care about gas prices. We are lucky in the fact that it's almost Labor Day, so we see demand taper off right away starting next week. That's going to help buffer whatever we might see. But do you see prices at the pump going higher as a result of this rally that we're seeing in crude oil? How much higher do you think they could go?
Well, I think that, we saw about $4 a gallon in 2012. I would say that if oil prices spike in the short term, we might see that again, but I don't think it's going to stick around. And like you said, we're tapering off the demand period, so I see gasoline prices following oil prices lower in the short term.
All right, Matt, thanks so much.
Thanks.
Meanwhile, emerging markets are all taking a hit for a second straight day. Asia, India, Turkey, and beyond. James Freeman is with the Wall Street Journal. Let's talk about currencies a little bit. Currencies really taking a beating. Why?
Well, there's never a good time for war, obviously, but this is a particularly rough time for these emerging markets where their currencies have already been dropping since May, really, with signals that the Federal Reserve here in the United States is going to start tapering, going to start coming back from their monetary adventurism. It means better rates here at home. A lot of money is coming back from those emerging markets. So also these markets have had slow growth lately. So this is really coming on top of a lot of other factors that are beating up in India, a lot of these Asian economies.
That is particularly bad news because you're talking about other factors hurting these countries and their currencies and their markets. At the same time, we could see oil prices going up. I mean, even if they don't go that high here in the U.S., around the world, Brent crude, we're seeing rising even higher. So there are a lot of things going on right now.
And there's a bad mood. I mean, you notice even some of the oil exporters not doing well because people think growth is slowing down. This is going to reduce demand even further. Russia, you think normally rallies when oil is going up. So it's not a good time for markets, and it's basically a pessimism about growth and this war fear thrown on top of it.
Yeah, it seems like it could be the thing that unhinges this bit of a recovery we're having, or is that too serious?
Well,
too dramatic?
It's a concern because we've had this horrible first 6 months of the year here in the United States, or maybe not horrible, but not what we were hoping. So we've been saying, oh no, the second half things are really going to get better, and now you add this, it's hard to be an optimist about global growth.
If it is over in a day or two, would you change your mind about that? And
well, it's not going to be over. It may be over in a day or two because the president decides he sent his political message and he's not going to do anymore. But this conflict is not ending in 2 days, okay? Because either Assad falls and then the guys we like over there slug it out with Al-Qaeda town by town to see who's in control, or he doesn't fall. I don't see the rebels capitulating anytime soon. So, it may be a 2-day U.S. involvement if that's what the president decides. It's not a 2-day war.
No, absolutely. And that's a point that a lot of people are missing because they're saying, and I heard it, on so many different networks today, it's going to be quick. No, because the fallout afterwards, if we do anything, you heard Leland Vitter talking about what happens to Israel after this. I mean, this is something that is going to continue and impact markets and the like. Thank you so much. I want to thank my entire panel. Thanks to everyone for coming out. That was great.